Welcome to African Mafia Stories, where loyalty is currency, power has a price, and every city hides a secret. Today's story is based in Burkina Faso. Enjoy.
Fatou Kaboré knew her father was frightened before he spoke a single word. Moussa Kaboré entered the dining room at exactly 8 minutes past 9, later than he had ever arrived for one of his own family dinners. His shoes struck the marble with their usual measured authority, but tonight there was a faint scrape beneath the left heel, the sound of a man who had walked too far without noticing the dust gathered under him. He paused inside the doorway, breathed once through his nose, then crossed toward the table without greeting anyone. Fatou sat 3 chairs from the head of the table, one hand resting beside her untouched glass of bissap. Around her, conversation continued with the careful brightness people used when they were pretending not to be worried. Her cousin Ibrahim was describing a new mining concession near Hound. Her aunt Mariam laughed too loudly at something that was not amusing. Colonel Drissa Ouagadougou, her father's head of security, shifted his weight every few seconds, making the leather of his holster creak against the chair. Fatou had been blind since she was 6 years old, but she had never lived in darkness the way sighted people imagined it. Rooms had shapes. People carried weather around them. Fear altered breathing, arrogance changed posture, and lies often arrived wrapped in unnecessary detail. Tonight, the entire house felt crooked. "You are late," she said. Her father stopped behind his chair. "And you are counting. You taught me to." A brief silence followed. Moussa pulled out his chair and sat down. There were 9 people at the table. Fatou had identified all of them within minutes of their arrival. Mariam wore the heavy amber perfume she reserved for formal gatherings. Ibrahim tapped his thumbnail against his gold ring whenever he felt ignored. Drissa smelled faintly of gun oil and peppermint. Lawyer Salif Badiono had placed his briefcase beside his right foot and checked twice that the class was locked. Her father's younger business partner, Adama Zongo, had greeted Fatou with both hands, but his palms had been damp. The 9th person was new. He had been introduced as a representative from a European refinery. His name was Laurent Morel, though his accent drifted strangely whenever he became distracted. His suit made almost no sound when he moved, but there was a metallic click in his right knee each time he bent it. Fatou had heard that sound before. She could not remember where. Dinner began with grilled fish, rice, and vegetables, served by staff who moved more quietly than usual. Moussa said little. When Ibrahim asked about the Hound concession, he gave a vague answer and changed the subject. When Mariam mentioned rumors of a government investigation, he placed his fork down with such precision that Fatou knew his anger had passed beyond shouting. "Rumors are useful," Moussa said. "They make fools reveal what they are hoping for." Ibrahim stopped tapping his ring. Fatou turned her face slightly toward her father. "And what are they hoping for?" "My chair." Nobody moved. Moussa gave a low laugh, but it held no warmth. "Do not look so shocked. Half the men in this city have imagined themselves sitting here." "Some of us are family," Ibrahim said. "That has never protected a throne." Fatou heard Mariam whisper his name in warning. Moussa continued eating. Her father had built Kaboré minerals from 3 trucks, a rented warehouse, and a handshake with a village chief who later disappeared. Officially, the company purchased gold from licensed cooperatives and exported it through approved channels. Unofficially, its reach extended into pits that did not exist on government maps, transport routes guarded by men without uniforms, and accounts held under names belonging to the dead. Moussa rarely discussed the hidden half of his empire with Fatou. He did not need to. Men spoke differently around women they underestimated, and they spoke most freely around a blind woman. Over the years, Fatou had assembled her father's kingdom from fragments, delayed shipments, coded phone calls, arguments cut short when she entered, and whispered references to soldiers, borders, and villages where gold left at night. She also knew the kingdom was no longer stable. For 3 weeks, trucks had arrived late from the west. 2 mine supervisors had vanished. Drissa had doubled the guards around the family residence, and Moussa had begun checking every door himself before sleeping. That afternoon, Fatou had heard him recording a message in his study. He had stopped speaking the moment her cane touched the corridor tiles. Now, as the main course was cleared, he reached across the table and touched the back of her hand. It was an unusual gesture. Moussa was affectionate in private but formal in company. His fingers remained on hers for 2 seconds. Then he withdrew them. "Fatou," he said, "after dinner, you will come to my study." Ibrahim's ring began tapping again. "Of course," she replied. The lights went out. Gasps rose around the table. A glass shattered near Mariam. Someone pushed a chair backward so hard that it struck the wall. Fatou did not move. The darkness meant nothing to her, but it transformed everyone else. Sighted people became noisy when the world disappeared. Their hands reached blindly. Their breathing sharpened. Their secrets rustled. A door opened near the service corridor. Not the main entrance. The smaller side door. 3 sets of footsteps entered the dining room. The first was heavy and steady, boots with thick soles. The second was lighter, quick and controlled. The third dragged slightly. Click. The damaged knee. Fatou's pulse tightened. "Everyone stay seated," Amin said. His voice was disguised beneath a cloth or mask, but the rhythm was wrong for a foreigner. The vowels belonged to Burkina Faso. Driss's chair scraped. A gunshot cracked through the room. Someone screamed. Fatou smelled cordite immediately, sharp and metallic. A body fell against the table, sending cutlery jumping across the plates. "Sit down, Colonel," the masked man said. Drissa was still alive. Fatou could hear him breathing through his teeth. The gunman moved toward the head of the table. Moussa did not plead. "You took your time," he said. The room became very still. The men with the damaged knee stopped beside him. "You knew." "I knew cowards were gathering. I did not know which coward would arrive first." A second man circled behind Fatou. He moved with the careful silence of someone trained not to disturb furniture. His sleeve brushed her chair, carrying the smell of cedarwood cologne. Fatou knew that scent. She had smelled it earlier that evening. Her mind moved through the guests, separating perfume, soap, tobacco, dust. Adama. Mousa's business partner. But Adama had been sitting 4 chairs away when the lights failed. Had he moved? Or had someone else worn the same scent? A hand touched the back of Fatou's chair. "She cannot identify us," the second man said. Fatou lowered her chin and made herself tremble. It was not difficult. Fear was already moving through her body like cold water. "No," the leader said. "But she can remember voices." The gun pressed lightly against her temple. Miriam sobbed. Ibrahim whispered a prayer. Somewhere near the wall, Drissa shifted his injured body. Moussa spoke with sudden force. "Leave her out of this." The leader laughed softly. "Now you remember you are a father." Fatou heard her father rise. Then came the sound she would remember for the rest of her life, 3 gunshots, close together, each one folding the room further inward. Moussa struck the table before falling. The killers moved immediately. Boots toward the side door. Quick steps behind them. The dragging leg last. Click. Click. The door shut. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the house erupted. Miriam screamed Mousa's name. Ibrahim shouted for the guards. Someone fumbled with a phone. Drissa groaned from the floor, cursing through clenched teeth. Fatou remained seated. Blood reached her fingertips where her father's hand had fallen across the table. She touched his wrist. No pulse. Her face became still. Around her, people wept, shouted, and demanded help. Their voices collided chaotically, but Fatou listened beneath them. One person at the table was not crying. One person was breathing slowly, carefully, as though relieved. And beneath the panic, almost hidden by the noise, Ibrahim's gold ring had stopped tapping. Fatou placed her hand over her father's cooling fingers. The gunmen had entered believing darkness belonged to them. They had made the first mistake of the war. By midnight, Moussa Kaboré's house had filled with police officers, private guards, government officials, and relatives who had not visited in years. They moved through the mansion with the loud authority of people arriving after the danger had passed. Radios crackled in the corridors. Camera shutters clicked around the dining room. Men issued instructions to one another while stepping over evidence, touching furniture, and repeating questions Fatou had already answered twice. She sat in the smaller drawing room beside Aunt Miriam, who had not stopped crying since the shooting. Miriam's grief came in waves, sometimes violent enough to shake the sofa, then suddenly quiet when someone important entered the room. Fatou held her aunt's hand while listening to the investigation unfold beyond the open doors. The first gunshot had struck Colonel Drissa in the shoulder. The second, third, and fourth had killed Moussa. The police had found no sign of forced entry. The security cameras had failed 7 minutes before the electricity went out. 2 guards stationed near the service corridor had disappeared. Nobody could explain how 3 armed men had crossed a heavily protected compound without being seen. Fatou could. They had been invited. "Madame Kaboré?" The voice belonged to Commissioner Seydou Traoré, a senior police officer whose polished shoes squeaked each time he shifted his weight. He had introduced himself earlier, along with 3 titles Fatou had not bothered remembering. "I need to ask you a few more questions." "You have already asked them." "I understand, but details can return later." "They have not gone anywhere." Miriam squeezed Fatou's hand. "She has been through enough." "So have we all," Ibrahim said from across the room. He had positioned himself near the fireplace, where he could receive condolences without appearing to seek them. His voice carried the strained dignity of a man rehearsing for public mourning. Since the police arrived, he had called Moussa my second father 6 times. Fatou turned toward the commissioner. "Ask." Seydou pulled a chair closer. "You heard 3 people enter?" "Yes." "You are certain?" 3 people entered through the service door. 1 wore heavy boots. 1 moved lightly and brushed against my chair. The third dragged his right leg slightly and had a clicking knee. The commissioner's pen paused. "You could distinguish all of that during the attack?" "I was listening." A short silence followed. Sighted people often found her answers unsettling. They believed blindness had removed something from her, but they rarely understood what constant attention had added. "Did you recognize any voices?" Seydou asked. "No. That was not entirely true." Fatou had not recognized the leader's identity, but there had been familiarity in his rhythm, a restrained sharpness she had heard before. Revealing that now would only send the police toward the wrong men too early. She needed time to separate memory from shock. What about the second attacker? He continued. He wore cedarwood cologne. Many men wear cologne. Not that one. Do you know the brand? No. But it has bergamot at the beginning, cedar beneath it, and something smoky that remains after the wearer leaves. Seda cleared his throat. And you smelled this on one of the attackers? Yes. Fatou heard fabric shift near the fireplace. Ibrahim had folded his arms. Adama Zongo stood somewhere behind him, close to the window. He had barely spoken since the murder. Earlier, when the police asked where he had been during the blackout, he claimed he had fallen beneath the table. His cedarwood scent had vanished. Now he smelled of strong citrus soap. Fatou kept her face turned toward the commissioner. What happened immediately before the lights failed? Seydou asked. My father told me to meet him in his study after dinner. Did he say why? No. Was that unusual? Yes. Ibrahim moved away from the fireplace. Uncle discussed business with many of us. It may have meant nothing. Fatou lifted her chin slightly. I did not say it meant anything. You are making it sound important. I answered a question. The room became quiet enough for Fatou to hear Adama swallow. Commissioner Seda closed his notebook. We will need formal statements from everyone tomorrow. You already have our statements, Ibrahim said. Tomorrow, you may remember more. His words were polite, but the warning beneath them was clear. The commissioner stood and walked toward the doorway. His shoes squeaked twice before he stopped. One more thing, Mademoiselle Kaboré. Did your father appear afraid tonight? Fatou thought of the dust beneath Mousa's heel, the touch of his fingers against her hand, and the unfinished recording she had heard from the corridor. No, she said. My father did not frighten easily. After the police left the room, Ibrahim exhaled sharply. You should be careful, he said. With the police? With details. They can become stories, and stories can damage innocent people. Fatou released Mariam's hand. Which innocent people are you worried about? Ibrahim did not answer immediately. His ring touched the side of his trouser pocket, producing a faint metallic tap. Once. Then silence. I am worried about this family, he said. So am I. Mariam began crying again, softer this time. Not tonight. Please. Adama finally stepped forward. His voice was gentle, almost paternal. Fatou should rest. We all should. He crouched beside her chair and placed one hand over hers. The citrus soap could not hide everything. Beneath it remained the faint smoky trace of cedarwood. Fatou allowed her fingers to relax beneath his. You were near me when the lights went out, she said. Adama's hand stiffened. I was across the table. At first. I fell when the shooting began. Of course. He withdrew his hand. Fatou heard him rise too quickly and bump the edge of a side table. A decorative bowl rattled, and Ibrahim cursed under his breath. Adama gave a weak laugh. We are all shaken. Fatou smiled without warmth. Some more than others. Mariam called for one of the housemaids to take Fatou upstairs. Fatou refused and stood without assistance, unfolding her cane with a practiced snap. She had walked the mansion's corridors since childhood and knew every turn, doorway, rug edge, and change in flooring. Tonight, however, the house no longer felt familiar. It felt occupied. 2 police officers stood outside the dining room. Another guarded the main staircase. Fatou passed them without speaking and turned toward her father's study. Miss, that room is restricted, an officer said. This is my home. It is part of the crime scene. My father was murdered in the dining room. We have instructions. Fatou stopped. The officer was young. His voice carried uncertainty, but the man beside him was older and remained silent. Fatou heard the faint scrape of a matchbox inside his pocket as he shifted. Who gave those instructions? Commissioner Traoré. From inside the study came the sound of a drawer closing. Fatou tilted her head. Someone was already in the room. Commissioner Traoré is not inside, she said. Neither officer responded. Fatou stepped closer to the door. Who is in my father's study? The older officer answered. An investigator. What is his name? A pause. Then the door opened. Lawyer Salif Bationo emerged carrying his locked briefcase. His breathing was controlled, but Fatou heard the quickened beat beneath his throat when he greeted her. Fatou. Salif. I was looking for documents the police requested. At midnight. They concern company ownership and security contracts. You keep those in your office. Some copies were here. His briefcase clasp clicked as he adjusted his grip. Fatou remembered it beside his chair during dinner, locked and untouched. Did my father ask you to retrieve them? Salif's reply came half a second too late. He had given me standing instructions. My father is dead. The corridor chilled around them. Salif lowered his voice. Which is why there are matters that must be handled quickly. What matters? Not here. Fatou placed one hand against the study door frame. Then take me inside. The police have not finished. You have. Salif did not move. Fatou could feel the officers watching, relieved that the confrontation no longer belonged to them. Finally, Salif stepped aside. The study smelled of old leather, paper, tobacco, and the sandalwood oil Moussa used on the carved desk. Fatou entered alone and closed the door behind her. The room had been disturbed. One drawer remained slightly open. Papers had been shifted across the desk. A chair stood several centimeters from its usual position, and the framed photograph beside the telephone had been knocked sideways. Fatou moved carefully around the desk, measuring the room through memory and touch. Her father had designed the study himself. He used to tell her that a room should reveal anyone who entered it. The rug beneath his chair contained a raised border she could feel through the soles of her shoes. The bookshelves had brass markers at waist height. Even the drawers differed slightly in texture. When she was a child, Moussa had turned the room into a game. Find the missing object. Count the footsteps. Tell me which drawer I opened. She had believed he was entertaining her. Now she was no longer certain. Fatou ran her fingers along the edge of the desk until she reached the bottom drawer. It was locked. She searched beneath the wooden lip and found the small recessed button Moussa had shown her once, then insisted she forget. She pressed it. A hidden panel released with a quiet click. Inside lay a digital recorder. Fatou removed it and closed the panel just as someone knocked. Fatou. Salif called. We need to speak. She slipped the recorder into the inner pocket of her dress. When she opened the door, Salif was standing alone. The police officers had moved farther down the corridor. He leaned closer. Your father changed his will 3 weeks ago. Fatou held her cane loosely in front of her. Who inherits the company? That is not a question I can answer in a corridor. You entered his study in front of police officers and removed documents, but the corridor concerns you? His voice hardened. There are people in this house who will kill for what is in that will. They already have. Salif's breathing changed. Not fear. Resignation. He left controlling ownership of Kaboré minerals to you. Fatou did not react. Somewhere downstairs, a woman began wailing as another relative arrived. Cars rolled through the front gates. Guards shouted names and checked identification. Salif continued. 51%. The remaining shares are divided among family trusts and business partners. Who knows? Myself. Your father. 2 witnesses. And the witnesses? One died last week. A mining accident. The other. Missing. Fatou turned her face toward the study door. Her father had known. The late arrival, the message, the handover hers. He had known they were coming, perhaps not that night, but soon. Why did he choose me? Salif gave a tired breath. Because he trusted you. My father did not trust anyone. He trusted what you noticed. Fatou's hand tightened around her cane. Salif placed the briefcase on the floor and lowered his voice further. He also left instructions. Until the will is formally presented, you are not to reveal your inheritance to anyone. Not Ibrahim. Not Mariam. Not Drissa. Not even the board. And Adama? Especially not Adama. Fatou heard footsteps at the far end of the corridor. One person approaching. Soft leather shoes. A slight pause every 4th step. Ibrahim. Salif picked up his briefcase. We speak tomorrow, he said quickly. Ibrahim reached them seconds later. What is happening? Legal formalities, Salif replied. At this hour? Death rarely respects office hours. Ibrahim's ring began tapping. Fatou turned toward him. Did you need something? I came to check on you. No, you came to see why Salif was in the study. His voice cooled. We all have questions. Then ask yours. Ibrahim stepped closer. Fatou could smell the wine still on his breath. What did Uncle want to discuss with you after dinner? I do not know. He must have given some indication. He said to meet him in his study. And that is all? Yes. Ibrahim remained silent. Fatou imagined him studying her face for weakness. People always searched her expression more carefully than they searched one another's, believing blindness made deception impossible. She lowered her head and let grief soften her shoulders. I should have gone with him before dessert, she whispered. Perhaps he would still be alive. The performance worked. Ibrahim's posture relaxed. He touched her upper arm. This is not your fault. Then whose is it? His fingers tightened once before releasing her. We will find out, he said. Fatou listened as he walked away. The ring did not tap. He was no longer nervous. He believed her. Inside her pocket, the recorder pressed against her ribs. Fatou returned to her bedroom and locked the door. She checked the windows, the adjoining bathroom, and the wardrobe before sitting on the edge of the bed. The recorder contained a single file. Her father's voice filled the room. Fatou, if you are hearing this, then I waited too long. She stopped breathing. Moussa sounded exhausted, but calm. The men around me believe gold is the center of this empire. It is not. Gold is only what they can count. The real empire is obligation. Who owes us? Who fears us? Who has eaten because of us, and who will starve if we fall? Fatou held the recorder in both hands. You will hear many people say I chose you because you are my daughter. That is not true. I chose you because you listen when others are performing. You know the difference between loyalty and obedience. You know that silence is often more honest than speech. He paused. In the recording, Fatou heard a glass placed on wood. There are 6 people who can destroy everything. 3 were at dinner tonight. 1 has already betrayed me. 1 believes he has. The 3rd is waiting to see who wins. Fatou leaned closer. Her father named no one. Instead, he recited 6 numbers. Then the message ended. Fatou replayed the final section twice. 6 numbers. Not a phone number. Not an account. The rhythm was deliberate, divided into pairs. She stood and crossed to the jewelry cabinet beside her dressing table. Inside were necklaces, rings, bracelets, and earrings her father had given her over the years. Moussa never chose jewelry for beauty. Each gift had come with strange instructions. Count the stones. Remember the weight. Never let anyone repair the clasp. Fatou touched the gold necklace he had given her on her 25th birthday. 6 small beads sat along the chain, each separated by a different distance. Her fingers moved across them. The numbers matched. She pressed the 3rd bead. A tiny compartment opened inside the clasp. There was no key inside. Only a narrow strip of paper containing a name. Drissa Ouagadougou. Fatou sat motionless as the first call to prayer drifted faintly across Ouagadougou. Colonel Drissa had taken a bullet during the attack. He had nearly died defending the room. Or he had been shot to make everyone believe he had. Fatou closed the necklace and returned it to her throat. The police would search for masked gunmen. The family would fight over mourning ceremonies, company shares, and public statements. The killers would assume Moussa's blind daughter remained frightened in her bedroom. Fatou turned toward the window as dawn began warming the glass. Her father had left her an empire, 6 enemies, and a puzzle written in gold. By sunrise, she had decided which inheritance mattered most. Colonel Drissa Ouagadougou survived surgery shortly after sunrise. The bullet had passed through the upper part of his shoulder, missing bone and artery by less than a centimeter. According to the doctor, he had been fortunate. According to Fatou, fortune had very little to do with where trained men placed bullets. By 9 that morning, Kaboré minerals had already begun collapsing. Gold deliveries were suspended at 2 western depots. A transport manager near Bobo de Lasso had stopped answering his phone. Government inspectors arrived at the company's headquarters carrying search orders, and 3 foreign buyers requested emergency meetings before canceling their contracts altogether. Rumors moved faster than official news, and by breakfast the city was already whispering that Moussa Kaboré's empire had died with him. Fatou listened to the reports from her father's study. She had claimed the room before anyone could stop her. Salif stood beside the desk, sorting documents into careful piles, while Ibrahim paced near the bookshelves. Adama sat by the window, his new cologne sharp and citrus-heavy, as though he had bathed in it. Aunt Mariam remained downstairs with relatives and religious leaders arranging the funeral. The company needs immediate leadership, Ibrahim said. Every hour we remain silent makes us look weaker. Fatou sat in her father's chair. Nobody had invited her to occupy it. She placed both hands on the carved armrests and turned her face toward Ibrahim. And who should lead? We need temporary stability. That is not a name. I am the obvious choice. Adama shifted near the window. Salif continued arranging papers. Ibrahim stopped pacing. I worked beside Uncle for 12 years. You worked for him. I negotiated contracts, managed political relationships, and handled disputes at the mines. You cannot dismiss that. I did not dismiss it. You are questioning it. Fatou heard impatience strain his voice. He had expected grief to make her passive, and each calm reply forced him further from the performance he had prepared. Adama cleared his throat. Perhaps we should not turn this into a family contest. It became a contest the moment the police left, Fatou said. Silence settled across the room. Salif closed a folder. The board will meet at noon. Without Moussa? Adama asked. That is usually when succession meetings occur. Ibrahim walked closer to the desk. His gold ring struck the wood once as he leaned forward. The board will support continuity. Meaning you, Fatou said. Meaning someone who understands the business. Fatou tilted her head. Tell me about Truck 27. The ring stopped moving. Adama's chair creaked. Ibrahim straightened. What about it? It failed to arrive from Hound 4 nights ago. Transport problems. What kind? A mechanical failure. Where? Near Baromo. Fatou waited. Ibrahim added, the axle broke. And the driver? He left the truck and reported the problem. His wife says he has been missing for 4 days. The room changed. It was slight, no more than a shift in breathing, but Fatou felt every person become still. Ibrahim recovered first. How would you know that? She called the house. That does not mean the truck is connected to his disappearance. No. The blood found inside it does. Adama stood abruptly. Blood. Fatou turned toward him. You sound surprised. I am surprised. Yet you did not ask whose blood. Adama sat again. There had been no blood report. Fatou had invented it. Her father used to test men with false information, then watch which part they corrected. Ibrahim exhaled through his nose. This is exactly why you should not interfere in company matters. You hear fragments and turn them into accusations. Did the axle break? Yes. Then why did you tell the insurance company the truck was stolen? His ring struck the desk again, harder this time. Salif finally looked up. Fatou had found the insurance letter in the study that morning. Moussa had marked the conflicting accounts with a thick line across the page. Ibrahim's voice lowered. You have no idea what you are reading. I did not read it. The words landed more heavily than she expected. Ibrahim stepped back from the desk. Fatou allowed the silence to stretch before continuing. My father had the report recorded for me. It was another lie, but a useful one. She could almost hear Ibrahim recalculating what Moussa might have shared with her. Salif slipped the insurance letter into his briefcase. This discussion can continue after the board meeting. No, Ibrahim said. We settle it now. Settle what? Fatou asked. Your position. My father has not yet been buried. And still his chair is occupied. Fatou ran one finger along the smooth wood beneath her hand. Does that trouble you? You are playing a dangerous game. I am asking questions. In this family, questions can be more dangerous than guns. Fatou smiled faintly. Then perhaps you should answer them carefully. A knock sounded at the study door. One of Driss's guards entered and announced that the colonel had regained consciousness. The police were waiting to question him, but Drissa had refused to speak until he saw Fatou. Ibrahim objected immediately. He was shot. He may be confused. He asked for me, Fatou said. That does not make you an investigator. No. It makes me the person he asked for. She rose, unfolded her cane, and left the men in her father's study. The hospital had placed Drissa in a private ward under armed guard. Fatou recognized the smell of antiseptic, plastic curtains, boiled linen, and stale coffee long before she reached his room. 2 police officers stood outside, along with one of Drissa's own men. Commissioner Seydou Traoré was inside. You cannot question him yet, the doctor said. I am not here to question him, Fatou replied. Seydou's shoes squeaked as he moved aside. 5 minutes. Drissa lay propped against several pillows, his breathing shallow from medication. Machines hummed beside him, and an intravenous drip clicked at irregular intervals. Fatou, he said. His voice sounded weaker than she had ever heard it. She approached the bed but did not take his hand. You asked for me. I failed your father. Did you? Drissa's breathing paused. Commissioner Seydou remained near the door. Fatou continued. The cameras failed. 2 guards disappeared. 3 armed men entered through a protected corridor, and the bullet meant for you missed everything that would have killed you. Drissa gave a pained laugh. You think I planned this? I think my father left your name inside a necklace. The commissioner shifted sharply. Drissa became completely still. Fatou had not intended to reveal the necklace, but she needed to hear his first reaction before caution entered it. He did not ask what necklace. Instead, he whispered, he told you about the 6? Seydou stepped forward. What 6? Drissa ignored him. Fatou moved closer to the bed. Who are they? Not people. What, then? Drissa's breathing roughened. Positions. The monitor beside him quickened. He spoke between shallow breaths. The soldier. The lawyer. The family. The mine. The border. The government. Fatou's fingers tightened around her cane. 6 enemies, but not 6 fixed names. 6 parts of the empire capable of turning against its center. Which position are you? She asked. Drissa's mouth moved into something that might have been a smile. You already know. The soldier. Yes. And did you betray him? Drissa turned his face away. Commissioner Seydou stepped closer. Colonel, you need to answer. Drissa spoke only to Fatou. Your father ordered me to reduce security last night. The room became silent except for the machines. Fatou felt the floor tilt beneath her. Why? He said the house had become a cage. He wanted to see who entered when the door was left open. You expect me to believe he invited his own assassins? He believed they would threaten him, force him to sign control of the mines. He did not expect them to shoot. Who knew security had been reduced? My deputy. Your father. Me. The missing guards? Assigned by my deputy. Name him. Drissa hesitated. Fatou struck her cane once against the floor. Name him. Captain Issa Nikima. Commissioner Seydou wrote quickly in his notebook. Fatou remembered the leader's voice at dinner. The restrained sharpness. The Burkinabe vowels beneath the mask. She had heard Issa speak many times outside her father's office. Not enough to be certain. Enough to be afraid she was right. Where is he? Seydou asked. Drissa's answer came quietly. Gone. Fatou turned toward the commissioner. Find him. Seydou's voice hardened. You do not issue police orders. Then consider it advice before he crosses the border. Drissa reached for Fatou's wrist. His grip was weak but urgent. There is something else. She did not pull away. The men who stood behind you during the shooting, he whispered. The one wearing cologne. Fatou leaned closer. I smelled it too, Drissa said. Before dinner. On Adama. I know. No, his fingers tightened. You smelled it on Adama because Adama wanted you to. Fatou's expression changed. Drissa released her wrist and sank back against the pillows. The cologne was bait. The monitor began sounding faster. The doctor hurried into the room and ordered everyone out. Fatou stepped into the corridor with Commissioner Seydou. What did he mean? Seydou asked. Someone expected me to identify Adama. Do you still suspect him? Yes. That is not what I asked. Fatou turned her face toward the squeak of his shoes. It means Adama may be guilty of something, she said, but perhaps not my father's murder. Her phone vibrated inside her handbag. A message from Salif had arrived. Fatou activated the screen reader and listened through her earpiece. The board meeting had begun early. Ibrahim had presented himself as acting chairman. Adama had supported him. 3 directors had already voted in favor. Fatou asked Seydou for the time. 11:38. The board meeting had been scheduled for noon. They had started without her because they believed she was trapped at the hospital. Fatou called Salif. Put me on speaker. A moment later, the murmur of the boardroom filled her ear. Men spoke over one another until Salif announced that Fatou Kaboré was on the line. Ibrahim's voice arrived first. This is a confidential meeting. It concerns my father's company. It concerns the board. And the board is discussing who will occupy his chair. We cannot leave the business leaderless. Fatou stood in the hospital corridor while nurses passed around her. Then I will make this simple, she said. No appointment made today will be recognized. Ibrahim laughed once. On whose authority? Salif answered before she could. On the authority of the controlling shareholder. The boardroom went silent. Fatou heard Ibrahim breathe in. Adama whispered something too softly for the phone to capture. Salif continued. Under Moussa Kaboré's final will, 51% of Kaboré minerals has been transferred to Fatou Kaboré. The silence that followed felt larger than the hospital. Fatou imagined every face turning toward the empty chair at the head of the boardroom table. Ibrahim finally spoke. You knew. Yes. You sat in that study and questioned me while knowing. Yes. His voice lost its polish. You have no idea what you have inherited. Fatou closed her hand around the gold necklace at her throat. My father believed otherwise. This company will tear you apart. Then you should be careful where you stand when it tries. She ended the call. Commissioner Seydou stared at her, though Fatou could not see it. She heard it in his silence. By noon, the announcement had spread through Ouagadougou. The blind daughter had inherited the gold empire. Some called it sentiment. Others called it madness. Within the company, managers began choosing sides before Fatou had even returned from the hospital. At one of the western depots, armed men removed Kaboré Minerals insignia from 3 trucks and replaced them with another company's markings. Near the border, a customs officer burned a ledger. In Ouagadougou, Captain Issa Nikima abandoned a government vehicle and disappeared into the market crowds. The kingdom had not accepted its new ruler. It was testing whether she could survive the crown. By the time Fatou returned to Kaboré Minerals, the guards at the entrance had already been given 2 sets of instructions. One came from Ibrahim, who had ordered them to admit only board members, senior managers, and government investigators. The other came from Salif, who had reminded them that the building now belonged to Fatou. The guards resolved the conflict by doing nothing. Fatou found them standing beneath the company's polished brass sign while employees clustered behind the glass doors, pretending not to watch. Cars filled the forecourt. Reporters waited outside the gates, and somewhere beyond them a woman shouted Fatou's name repeatedly, hoping for a statement. Fatou stepped from the vehicle with her cane in one hand and Mousa's gold necklace resting against her throat. Salif walked beside her. The head guard approached. Madame Kaboré, we have been instructed to secure the premises. Good. No one is to enter without authorization. Also good. He hesitated. Your name was not included on the list. Fatou stopped in front of him. Who gave you the list? Monsieur Ibrahim. And who signs your salary? Kaboré Minerals. Who owns Kaboré Minerals? The guard said nothing. Fatou removed her phone from her handbag and called the company's finance director. She placed the call on speaker. Amadou, she said when he answered, suspend payment to the security contractor. The guard stiffened. Effective immediately? Amadou asked. Until I confirm who is protecting this building and who is protecting Ibrahim. She ended the call. The doors opened before she reached them. Employees moved aside as she entered the lobby. Their silence followed her toward the lifts, not respectful yet, but cautious. Some had worked for Moussa for decades. Others had joined because the company paid better than its competitors and asked fewer questions. Very few believed Fatou could control an empire built around mines she had never visited and men who settled disagreements with weapons. That belief was useful. She entered the executive boardroom 11 minutes after noon. Ibrahim stood at the head of the table, occupying the chair Salif had left empty for her. Adama sat to his right. 6 directors were present, along with Amadou from finance and the head of mining operations, Suleiman Kinda. Nobody rose. Fatou folded her cane and placed it on the table. I believe you are in my chair, she said. Ibrahim remained seated. This is not a family dining room. No. At the dining room, you waited until my father was dead before reaching for his place. A director coughed into his fist. Ibrahim pushed the chair back and stood. You think ownership makes you qualified? No. Ownership makes your qualifications irrelevant. Adama intervened before Ibrahim could reply. We are losing contracts while we argue. 3 buyers have suspended purchases. The Hound Depot is refusing instructions from headquarters, and armed men have taken control of vehicles near Banfora. Under whose authority? Fatou asked. No one knows. Someone always knows. Suleiman shifted at the far end of the table. He was a broad, soft-spoken man who had managed Moussa's mining interests for 9 years. He wore a silver watch that clicked faintly whenever he flexed his wrist. Fatou turned toward the sound. Tell me about Hound. Suleiman cleared his throat. The workers are afraid. Of what? Instability. That word means nothing. They do not know who controls the company. They do now. It is not so simple. Then simplify it. Suleiman's watch clicked again. The depot manager has received instructions from another shareholder, he said. Which shareholder? I was not told. Were the instructions written? Yes. Read them. A pause followed. I do not have the letter here. Fatou opened the leather folder Salif had placed before her. You mean this letter? She slid a document across the table. No one reached for it. Salif had found it in Ibrahim's temporary office that morning. It authorized Suleiman to transfer operational control of 3 mining depots to a holding company registered in Côte d'Ivoire. The signature at the bottom was supposed to belong to Moussa. The letter had been dated 2 days after his death. Fatou turned toward Suleiman. Would you like to explain how a dead man signed this? His breathing deepened. Ibrahim spoke sharply. We do not know where that document came from. It came from your office. That proves nothing. It proves you should choose better hiding places. Adama pushed his chair back. This meeting is becoming a trial. No, Fatou replied. Trials happen after arrests. The room tightened around her. Fatou opened another folder. Suleiman, you authorized fuel payments for 14 trucks that have not moved in 6 weeks. There are delays at the mines. You also approved wages for 72 guards. Driss's records show 41. Colonel Driss's records are incomplete. Then perhaps the missing 31 men can explain where the fuel went. Suleiman's watch stopped clicking. Fatou had spent the drive from the hospital listening to reports from the company's accounting system. Amadou had described every irregular payment while Salif compared them with Moussa's private files. Her father had not been confused during his final weeks. He had been building a map of the people draining his empire. Suleiman was not merely failing to control the mines. He was financing something beyond them. Where is the gold from truck 27? Fatou asked. No one answered. She turned toward Ibrahim. You said the axle broke. It did. Suleiman reported the truck stolen. I repeated what I had been told. By whom? Ibrahim glanced toward Suleiman. The gesture was small, but Fatou heard fabric shift as both men moved. Suleiman stood. This is insulting. Sit down. I have managed these operations since before you knew where Hound was. Fatou lifted her face toward him. Hound is 267 kilometers southwest of Ouagadougou. The depot sits 14 kilometers outside the town, beside a seasonal riverbed. Trucks use the eastern road during the rains because the bridge west of the depot floods. Suleiman remained silent. My father described every route to me, she continued. He made me memorize them because maps can be stolen. A director shifted uneasily. That part was true, though Fatou had never understood why Moussa insisted she learn distances, road surfaces, fuel stops and border crossings. He would sit with her for hours, turning the gold trade into a geography lesson. Perhaps he had always known the empire would eventually have to live inside her memory. Suleiman lowered himself into his chair. Fatou folded her hands. You will remain here until the police arrive. Ibrahim struck the table. You cannot detain a director. I can prevent a suspected thief from leaving company property. You have no proof. Fatou turned toward Amadou. Play the recording. The finance director connected his phone to the boardroom speakers. Suleiman's voice filled the room. He was speaking to someone at Hound, ordering the depot manager to release 3 sealed consignments without recording their weight. The other men objected. Suleiman threatened to send Captain Issa Nakima to deal with him. When the recording ended, nobody moved. Suleiman's chair scraped backward. He reached inside his jacket. Fatou heard the movement before anyone else reacted. Gun, she said. Salif dropped behind the table. A shot exploded through the boardroom. Glass shattered near the windows. Directors screamed and fell beneath their chairs. A second shot struck the wall behind Fatou. She remained standing long enough to locate the weapon by sound, then dropped to one knee as Suleiman fired again. The bullet tore through the chair she had been using. Company guards rushed toward the room, but the boardroom doors had been locked from inside. Fatou heard Suleiman move around the table. His breathing was heavy. His shoes dragged against the carpet. He was not approaching the exit. He was coming for her. Where are you? He demanded. Fatou pressed one hand against the floor. Around her, men were breathing too loudly, chairs lay overturned, and broken glass continued settling in small crystalline sounds. She separated each noise until Suleiman's steps emerged from the chaos. 3 meters away. Then 2. She reached beneath the table and took hold of her folded cane. Suleiman fired toward a sound on her left. Someone cried out. Fatou rolled beneath the table as he moved closer. His silver watch clicked. She swung the cane toward it. The metal shaft struck his wrist. The gun fell, skidding across the carpet. Suleiman cursed and lunged beneath the table, but Fatou drove the cane into his throat, then kicked the weapon farther away. Salif seized Suleiman from behind. Adama emerged from beneath his chair and helped pin him against the floor while Ibrahim unlocked the boardroom doors. The guards entered seconds later. Suleiman shouted that Fatou was destroying the company. He called her an ignorant child, a helpless woman, a blind fool who would lead them all into the grave. Fatou stood and straightened her dress. You missed me 3 times, she said. Perhaps blindness is not our greatest problem. The police arrived within minutes. Commissioner Seydou entered the boardroom while paramedics treated a director whose arm had been grazed by a bullet. Broken glass covered the carpet, and blood from Suleiman's mouth stained the front of his shirt. Seydou listened to the recording, inspected the forged letter, and ordered Suleiman taken into custody. As officers dragged him away, Suleiman turned his head toward Fatou. Issa is not the man you should fear. Who is? Suleiman laughed through split lips. The one who taught him. The doors closed behind him. Fatou remained motionless. Captain Issa had served under Drissa for 11 years. If Issa had been taught by someone, Suleiman could only mean the colonel. Commissioner Seydou approached. Did you know he was armed? No. You challenged him in a locked room. I challenged him in a boardroom. He turned it into something else. You could have been killed. My father was killed while surrounded by armed guards. Safety appears unreliable. Seydou lowered his voice. Suleiman's men will react when they hear about his arrest. Then we should tell them quickly. He stared at her for a moment. You are not what they expected. That is becoming expensive for them. After the police left, the remaining directors returned slowly to their seats. None complained when Fatou took the chair at the head of the table. Ibrahim poured himself water. His hand shook enough for the bottle to strike the glass. Adama remained near the broken window, breathing hard. Fatou addressed the room. Suleiman controlled the mines. He used company money to finance armed men, steal consignments, and support Captain Issa. As of today, every depot manager reports directly to headquarters. No gold moves without 2 independent weight records. No guard is paid without biometric verification. Every truck receives a new tracking unit. One director protested. That will take weeks. It begins today. The western depots may refuse. Then we close them. Adama turned from the window. Closing them will cost millions. Leaving them open is costing more. Ibrahim set down his glass. You are making decisions based on one day's information. Fatou faced him. I am making decisions based on years of people talking around me. The boardroom fell quiet. She continued. Ibrahim, you will surrender all company devices and remain available to investigators. His chair shifted sharply. You have no grounds. You hid a forged transfer letter. I did not write it. Then you should be eager to help determine who did. You cannot suspend me. I can. He stood. The board will not support this. Fatou turned toward the directors. Those who agree with Ibrahim may leave with him. No one moved. The betrayal arrived without words. Ibrahim waited, perhaps expecting Adama to stand. Adama remained by the window. At last Ibrahim gave a bitter laugh. You think this is victory? No. You have embarrassed men who control roads, borders, and soldiers. They embarrass themselves. You have no idea what they will do next. Fatou touched the gold necklace at her throat. I know exactly what frightened men do next. Ibrahim walked out alone. When his footsteps disappeared down the corridor, Adama approached the table. You should have told me about the will, he said. Why? I was loyal to your father. You changed your cologne before the police questioned you. Adama went still. Fatou continued. Drissa said the cedarwood scent was planted so I would suspect you. And yet you do. Yes. Then what do you want from me? The truth. He exhaled slowly and sat in the chair beside her. I left the dining room before the lights failed. Salif turned toward him. Adama spoke quickly now, as though holding the words had become more dangerous than releasing them. Moussa sent me to retrieve a file from his study. He said someone would come for it during dinner. When the lights went out, I was in the corridor. A man struck me and took my jacket. The jacket carrying your cologne, Fatou said. Yes. Why did you lie? Because I saw Captain Issa enter the service corridor. You saw him. Before the lights failed. He was speaking to Colonel Drissa. Fatou felt the room narrow. What did they say? I could not hear everything. Drissa told him the gate would remain open for 7 minutes. Issa asked whether Moussa suspected anything. And Drissa? He said, Moussa suspects everyone. Salif leaned forward. Why did you not tell the police? Adama gave a humorless laugh. Drissa controls half the men who protect this company. Issa controls the other half. You supported Ibrahim this morning, Fatou said. I thought he could protect the business. No. You thought he could protect you. Adama did not deny it. Fatou rested her fingers on the table. The soldier. Her father's first position. Drissa had admitted reducing security but claimed Moussa ordered it. Adama now placed him with Issa before the attack. Suleiman's final warning pointed toward the same men. Yet Drissa had taken a bullet. He had also warned Fatou that the cologne was bait. Every path led toward him, but none reached the center cleanly. What file did my father send you to retrieve? Fatou asked. Adama swallowed. I did not find it. What was inside? He said it contained the names of every person who had purchased gold from unauthorized mines during the last 10 years. Salif's briefcase clasp clicked. Fatou heard it. Once. The lawyer had moved his foot against the case, perhaps unintentionally. Perhaps not. Where is the file now? She asked. Adama lowered his voice. The men who attacked me took it. Fatou turned toward Salif. The lawyer said nothing. For the first time since the murder, she remembered the sound inside her father's study before Salif emerged. A drawer closing. A locked briefcase. Documents removed under police protection. Her father's 6 positions returned to her. The soldier. The lawyer. The family. The mine. The border. The government. Suleiman had represented the mine. Ibrahim represented the family. Drissa was the soldier. And Salif sat beside her, carrying a briefcase no one had opened. Fatou reached for her cane. Salif, she said, place the briefcase on the table. The lawyer did not move. Adama's chair creaked as he turned toward him. Now, Fatou said. Salif lifted the case slowly and set it before her. The clasps faced away from him. Fatou heard his breathing remain steady. Too steady. Open it. I cannot. Why? Because your father instructed me not to. Moussa is dead. The instruction remains. Fatou placed her fingertips on the leather. Does the file Adama described belong to my father? Yes. Is it inside this case? Salif's silence answered before he did. It is. Adama rose. Fatou kept one hand on the briefcase. Who were you protecting when you removed it from the study? Salif's reply was barely above a whisper. You. A phone began ringing. Not Fatou's. Not Adama's. The sound came from inside the locked briefcase. Salif stopped breathing. Fatou turned the case toward him. Open it. The phone continued ringing. After the 5th ring, Salif entered the combination. The clasp snapped apart. Inside lay several documents, Mousa's missing file, a pistol, and a small black phone. The screen reader on Fatou's own device could not identify the caller, but Adama read the name aloud. Captain Issa. The phone stopped ringing. A message arrived seconds later. Salif read it silently. What does it say? Fatou asked. He hesitated. Adama took the phone from him. His voice became hollow as he read the message. You gave her the company. Now bring us the daughter. Fatou rested both hands on the table. The men who wanted her father's empire had finally stopped pretending she was irrelevant. That was their second mistake. Salif did not deny that Captain Issa had been contacting him. He sat at the boardroom table with the open briefcase between them, while broken glass glittered across the carpet and police sirens faded beyond the building. Adama stood near the door, watching him with the rigid disbelief of a man who had just discovered the floor beneath him was hollow. Fatou remained in her father's chair. "How long?" she asked. Salif rubbed both hands over his face. 3 weeks. "And you said nothing?" "I told Moussa. After my father died. Before." Fatou touched the edge of the open briefcase, tracing the cold metal of the pistol without lifting it. "Why would Issa contact my father's lawyer?" "He wanted the will changed." Adama gave a low curse. Salif continued. "He said Moussa had lost control of the mines and that the company needed stronger leadership. At first, he offered money. When I refused, he sent photographs of my wife outside her office and my son leaving school." Fatou heard no tremor in his voice, but the words carried the exhausted flatness of fear repeated too many times. "Why did you keep meeting him?" "To convince him I was cooperating." "You answered his messages. So he would believe I was useful." "You removed the file from my father's study. Moussa ordered me to protect it if anything happened." "And the gun?" Salif hesitated. "Also his." Fatou turned slightly toward him. "My father kept a pistol inside your briefcase?" "He knew the police would search his office first." Adama crossed the room. "You expect us to believe Moussa predicted his own murder but did nothing to stop it?" "He tried." "No," Fatou said. "He tried to expose them." The truth had begun taking shape, though each piece seemed designed to point in 2 directions. Moussa had reduced security to draw out a traitor. He had placed evidence where Fatou could find it, changed his will, and ordered Salif to protect the buyer's file. He had known the empire was being hollowed from within. What he had misjudged was the willingness of his enemies to kill him in front of his family. Fatou picked up Issa's phone. "Call him." Salif's chair scraped. "That is dangerous. He already knows you gave me the company. He suspects. Then let us improve his information." Adama moved closer. "What are you planning?" "To let him hear what he wants." Fatou handed the phone to Salif. The lawyer stared at it. "Tell him I believe you betrayed my father," she said. "Tell him I am frightened, isolated, and willing to exchange the buyer's file for safe passage out of Burkina Faso. He will know it is a trap. Only if you sound relieved." Salif's breathing slowed. Fatou understood why Moussa had trusted him. Fear had bent the lawyer, but it had not broken him. He had removed the file, hidden the will, and endured threats without surrendering either. Yet loyalty was not innocence, and Fatou had no intention of confusing the two. "Make the call," she said. Issa answered on the second ring. "Salif." His voice was unmasked now. Fatou recognized it immediately. The clipped consonants, the restrained sharpness, the faint pause before certain words. It was the voice from the dining room, the man who had ordered everyone to remain seated while Moussa died. Her grip tightened around the cane resting across her knees. Salif looked toward her, though the gesture was useless. She nodded once. "She knows," he said. A silence followed. "How much?" "The will. The file. The messages." "And Drissa?" "She suspects him." Issa laughed softly. The sound was exactly as Fatou remembered it from the darkness. "Good." Salif swallowed. "She wants to leave." "Leave where?" "She has not decided. Ghana, perhaps. Côte d'Ivoire." "Why would I care?" "Because she will take the file." Issa became quiet again. Fatou listened to the background around him. Wind. A loose sheet of metal striking something at regular intervals. An engine idling nearby. Voices in the distance, at least 2 men, one speaking in Diola. Issa was not inside the city. "Put her on," he said. Salif covered the phone. "He wants you." Fatou held out her hand. "Captain." Issa said nothing for several seconds. Then, "You remember my voice?" "Yes." "You remembered it that night?" "Not immediately." "That disappoints me." "You wore a mask." "For your benefit." "No. For the benefit of the sighted people at the table." Issa laughed again, but this time there was irritation beneath it. "Your father enjoyed talking about you. He said you could hear a lie before it was spoken." "He exaggerated." Moussa rarely exaggerated. He preferred underestimating everyone else. Fatou turned her head slightly, following the sound of metal tapping behind him. "Why did you kill him?" "You know why." "I know you entered the room. I know you fired. I do not know whose order you followed." The silence sharpened. Salif and Adama both became still. Issa's reply came slowly. "Moussa ordered many deaths. Do you intend to investigate all of them?" "I am beginning with his." "You think inheritance makes you powerful?" "No. It makes me visible." And visibility makes you easier to kill. Fatou smiled faintly. You had me at the table and left me alive. That was Drissa's condition. Adama inhaled sharply. Fatou's voice remained calm. Drissa ordered you to spare me? He said the operation ended with Moussa. The operation? Moussa was supposed to sign control of the western mines. Nothing more. Yet you shot him. He reached for a weapon. That is a lie. Issa's voice hardened. You were not watching. I heard his chair move. He stood after you pressed a gun against my head. His hand struck the table before the first bullet. He never reached toward the drawer behind him. The line went quiet. Fatou continued. You shot him because someone changed the order. A man shouted faintly in the background. Issa moved away from the phone, and the tapping metal became quieter. Bring the file, he said. Where? You will receive instructions. I want proof that you can get me out. You want proof? I want the name of the person who ordered my father's death. Issa laughed without humor. Your father created too many enemies for one name. Yet only one voice could change Drissa's operation. The engine in the background revved. When Issa spoke again, his confidence had thinned. Bring the file, Fatou. Tell me the name. You are in no position to negotiate. Then kill me and search the company yourself. She ended the call. Salif stared at her. He may disappear now. No. He needs the file. Adama moved toward the window. And if he decides to take it by force? He already tried force. It gave me the company. The black phone vibrated moments later. A message displayed an address and a time. An abandoned cotton processing warehouse outside Ouagadougou. Midnight. Come with Salif. No police. Bring the file. Adama read the message aloud. Ouagadougou is almost 2 hours away, he said. Longer if the roads are watched, Salif added. Fatou stood. Then we leave early. Both men objected at once. Fatou lifted one hand. Issa expects Salif and a frightened woman carrying evidence. That is what he will see. You cannot see how many men are waiting, Adama said. They cannot hear what I hear. That did not save your father. The words escaped him before he could soften them. Fatou's face went still. No, she said. It did not. For a moment, grief entered the room more heavily than fear. Moussa had prepared her to remember routes, recognize voices, open hidden compartments, and judge men by the lies they chose. Yet he had never taught her what to do with the guilt of surviving 3 bullets meant for someone else. Fatou picked up the buyer's file. We are going to Ouagadougou. Salif closed the briefcase. Then we need a copy. No. We need something more useful. She turned toward Amadou, who had remained outside the damaged boardroom with security staff. Find every buyer in this file with government connections. Ministers, customs officers, military suppliers, judges, anyone related to them. That could take hours. You have 3. Amadou left immediately. Fatou called Commissioner Seydou next. She did not tell him about the meeting. Instead, she asked whether the police had located Drissa's missing deputy or traced the 2 vanished guards. No, Seydou said. But we found Captain Issa's vehicle near the western road. Empty. Yes. What was inside? Food, ammunition, 2 radios, and a map. Which area? Ouagadougou and the routes north. Fatou lowered the phone. Issa had not chosen the warehouse randomly. He had already prepared it. Before ending the call, she asked one final question. Have you spoken to Drissa again? The hospital says he is resting. Is he guarded? 2 officers outside his room. Your officers? A pause. Why? Because Drissa's men protected my father too. Fatou ended the call and turned to Adama. Go to the hospital. You said we were leaving. You are not coming. He stiffened. I can help. You can help by determining whether Drissa is still in his bed. Adama understood. Within 40 minutes, he called back. Colonel Drissa was gone. The 2 police officers outside his room claimed he had been transferred for emergency tests. The hospital had no record of the transfer. A service lift camera showed 3 men wheeling him out beneath a sheet. Drissa had vanished less than 20 minutes after Fatou's call with Issa. He knew, Salif said. Fatou stood beside her father's desk, listening to the distant hum of employees rebuilding the day around them. He knew Issa had contacted us. Then someone here is informing him. Someone has been informing him from the beginning. At 5 that afternoon, Amadou returned with the results from the buyer's file. 23 names connected to senior government officials. 7 connected to military procurement. 4 linked directly to the ministry responsible for mining licenses and export permits. 1 name appeared more frequently than the rest, not as a buyer, but as the silent owner of 3 companies used to purchase illegal gold. Commissioner Seydou Traoré. Fatou asked Amadou to repeat it. He did. Salif sat down slowly. The government, Fatou said. Her father's final position. Seydou had entered the house after the murder, controlled the crime scene, placed officers outside the study, and allowed Salif to remove evidence because he wanted to know where the file went. He had listened when Fatou exposed Drissa's name at the hospital. He had learned about the 6 positions before she understood them herself. Perhaps he had not been investigating the murder. Perhaps he had been measuring how much Moussa had left behind. Fatou called Seydou. He answered warmly. Have you remembered something? Yes. What? The voice of the man who killed my father. Seydou's breathing changed. Only slightly. Captain Issa, he asked. Fatou had not said Issa's name. She let the silence expose him. Seydou recovered too late. Drissa mentioned him at the hospital. Drissa named him as the missing deputy. He did not identify him as the shooter. Another pause. Fatou heard a door close on Seydou's side of the line. Where are you? He asked. At the company. You should remain there. I am sending officers. No. This is no longer optional. It never was. Seydou's voice lost its polished patience. Your father protected you from the nature of his business. Do not mistake that protection for competence. Fatou touched the gold necklace at her throat. You bought illegal gold through 3 companies. The line went silent. She named them. When Seydou spoke again, his voice had become the voice of another man entirely. Moussa was going to destroy people who had protected him for 20 years. He was going to expose you. He was going to collapse the entire sector to preserve his daughter's inheritance. Then you ordered Issa to kill him. I ordered no such thing. But you changed Drissa's plan. Seydou exhaled slowly. You have Salif's file. Yes. Bring it to Ouagadougou. Fatou's blood cooled. The warehouse meeting had not been Issa's arrangement. It was Seydou's. Is Drissa alive? She asked. For now. And Issa? A faint laugh. Captain Issa believes he is in control. Men with guns often suffer from that illness. The final shape of the conspiracy became clear. Drissa had opened the gate to frighten Moussa into surrendering the mines. Issa had led the operation. Seydou had used it to turn coercion into murder, then sent police officers to control the evidence afterward. The soldier had betrayed Moussa. The government had betrayed the soldier. And Issa had mistaken himself for the hand holding the knife, when he was only the blade. Midnight, Seydou said. Bring the file, and perhaps you and Drissa leave alive. Fatou ended the call. Salif stood beside her. What now? We go. To Seydou. To all of them. Fatou replaced the buyer's file inside the briefcase. Then she handed Amadou a flash drive containing every page. If I do not call by 1 in the morning, send this to every newspaper, foreign refinery, embassy, mining authority, and prosecutor you can find. Amadou accepted it with both hands. Salif looked at Fatou. That could destroy Kaboré minerals. Yes. Your inheritance. My father said gold was only what men could count. She closed the briefcase. The empire is obligation. Outside, evening settled over Ouagadougou as 2 unmarked vehicles prepared for the road to Ouagadougou. Fatou climbed into the first with Salif. Inside the second were 4 guards chosen from men Drissa had dismissed months earlier for refusing Captain Issa's orders. They carried no company insignia and had been told only that Moussa's killers would be waiting at the end of the road. Fatou rested the briefcase beside her feet. At midnight, the soldier, the government, and the daughter would finally enter the same room. Only one of them understood that the gold was no longer the most valuable thing inside it. The abandoned cotton warehouse stood beyond Ouagadougou's last streetlights, surrounded by dry fields and rusted machinery that had not moved in years. Fatou heard the building before she reached it. Loose roofing sheets lifted and dropped in the wind. Metal chains struck an empty loading frame. Somewhere inside, water dripped at regular intervals into a shallow container, each fall traveling through the cavernous space. The first vehicle stopped 30 meters from the entrance. Salif switched off the engine. No lights, Fatou said. The guards in the second vehicle had already separated, moving toward positions they had memorized from old plans of the warehouse. 2 approached from the rear. 1 remained near the road. The 4th followed Fatou and Salif at a distance, close enough to intervene but far enough to remain unseen. Fatou stepped onto the dirt. The night carried engine fumes, cotton dust, old oil, and the faint smoky smell of a fire burning somewhere beyond the warehouse. She held her cane in one hand and the briefcase in the other. Salif walked beside her. You can still turn back, he said. So can you. I do not think either of us will. They entered through a wide loading door. A generator hummed inside. Several work lamps had been positioned around the warehouse, creating islands of light for those who needed them. Fatou did not. She measured the space through echoes, counting pillars, walls, open distances, and the movement of men trying not to reveal where they stood. There were 7 people inside. She recognized Issa first by the clicking knee. Drissa was seated near the center of the warehouse, his breathing strained and uneven. The hospital bandages remained on his shoulder, but his wrists had been tied behind a metal chair. Commissioner Seydou stood somewhere to Fatou's left. His polished shoes no longer squeaked. He had changed them. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." Salif set the briefcase on the concrete floor. Issa stepped forward. "Open it." Fatou kept one hand on the handle. "Release Drissa." Seda laughed softly. "You have inherited your father's appetite for negotiation." "I inherited his company. The appetite was already mine." Drissa raised his head. "Fatou, leave." "You left first." His breathing faltered. Fatou turned toward him. "You opened the gate. I believed they would frighten Moussa. You helped armed men enter my home. I was trying to save the company." "No. You were trying to control it." Drissa gave no answer. Issa moved closer. His knee clicked twice. Fatou heard another man reposition near the rear wall. A safety catch shifted beneath a thumb. Everyone was armed except Salif and her. At least, that was what Seda believed. "Give us the file," he said. "And then? You and Salif leave." "Drissa. He answers for his decisions." Issa's voice sharpened. "That was not the agreement." Seydou turned toward him. "You were not invited to discuss agreements." The warehouse tightened. Fatou had expected the fracture. Men who conspired together often survived only while their interests remained hidden from one another. Issa stepped closer to Seydou. "You said the file would disappear." "It will." "And the woman?" Seydou's reply came without hesitation. "Also." Salif inhaled. Drissa cursed under his breath. Fatou remained still. Issa laughed once, hollowly. "You told me she would leave the country. I told you what was necessary." "And Moussa?" Seydou's silence answered. Issa's breathing changed. Fatou heard the moment he understood that the murder had never been his decision, only his usefulness. "You ordered me to shoot," Issa said. "I gave you an opportunity to solve a problem. You said Moussa had reached for a gun. He would have eventually." Drissa strained against the chair. "You changed the operation without telling me." Seydou's voice grew impatient. "You were too sentimental. Moussa would never have surrendered the mines while he remained alive." Fatou turned her face toward the commissioner. "Say that again." The request unsettled him. "What?" "Say that my father had to die." Seda laughed. "Why?" Fatou lifted her left hand slightly. A small recorder was fastened beneath the cuff of her sleeve. Seda's men moved at once. Fatou dropped the briefcase and struck the floor with her cane. The signal echoed through the warehouse. The lights went out. Gunfire erupted from the rear. Fatou moved immediately, stepping right, then forward, using the confusion she had mapped before anyone else lost sight. Men shouted and fired toward shadows. One lamp crashed. The generator stopped, plunging the warehouse into absolute darkness. To Fatou, nothing had changed. Issa's knee clicked rapidly as he lunged for the briefcase. She swung her cane low and struck his injured leg. He fell hard, firing once into the roof. Salif kicked the weapon from his hand. Near the center of the warehouse, Drissa threw himself sideways with the chair as bullets struck the floor around him. Seda shouted for his men to hold their positions. Nobody obeyed. Fatou heard one of her guards seize a gunman near the entrance. Another exchange of shots came from the loading bay. A body dropped against a metal drum. Then footsteps rushed toward her from the left. Seydou. He had abandoned the file. He was coming for her. Fatou stepped behind a concrete pillar as he fired. The bullet struck the edge, spraying dust across her face. "You should have stayed helpless," he shouted. "You should have believed I was." He fired again. Fatou listened to the empty chamber click. Seda swore and reached for another weapon. She moved before he could draw it. Her cane struck his hand, then his throat. He stumbled backward, but he was larger and recovered quickly, seizing the cane and pulling Fatou toward him. She released it. His momentum carried him off balance. Fatou stepped inside his reach and drove the heel of her palm into his injured throat. Seda collapsed to one knee, choking. A gun pressed against the back of his head. Commissioner Seda froze. Drissa stood behind him, one wrist still tied to the broken arm of the chair. Blood soaked through his hospital gown, and Issa's pistol shook in his hand. "You used my men," Drissa said. Seda forced a laugh. "You offered them. You ordered Mousa's death. And you opened the gate." Drissa's breathing became ragged. Fatou heard the pistol tremble. "Do not," she said. Drissa turned toward her voice. "He killed your father. He arranged it. He deserves to die." "Yes." The word surprised everyone. Fatou stepped closer. "But not here." Seda coughed and began laughing again. "You think the courts will touch me? Half the government is in that file." Fatou picked up her cane. "No," she said. "The courts will touch you because the file is no longer here." Silence followed. She continued. Copies were sent to journalists, embassies, foreign refineries, prosecutors, and every official whose rival appears in those pages. Seda stopped laughing. You are lying. The first release was scheduled for midnight. Salif checked his watch. It is 12:17. Fatou heard phones begin vibrating across the warehouse. One in Seydou's pocket. Another near Issa. Then Drissa's. The information had escaped. The empire of obligation was already turning against the men who had depended on secrecy. Seda lunged suddenly. Drissa fired. The bullet struck the floor beside the commissioner's hand. Next one is not a warning, Drissa said. Fatou walked toward the briefcase. Issa lay nearby, clutching his damaged knee while one of her guards restrained him. His earlier confidence had vanished, leaving only pain and disbelief. You heard me that night, he said. Yes. And you let me speak. I needed to know whose voice you carried. He spat toward her feet. You think you have won? No. Fatou opened the briefcase and removed Mousa's file. I think you have lost. Police vehicles approached in the distance. Not Seydou's officers. Fatou had arranged for a prosecutor's special unit from Bobo Dioulasso to move only after the documents were released. They arrived with national gendarmes and several officials whose careers now depended on proving they were not part of Seydou's network. By dawn, the warehouse had become a crime scene. Issa was arrested for Mousa's murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, and multiple weapons offenses. Seydou was taken away under armed escort while phones across the country continued receiving portions of the buyer's file. Drissa was returned to hospital under guard. Before he left, he asked to speak with Fatou alone. They stood near the loading door as the sky brightened over the fields. I failed him, Drissa said. Yes. I believed I could frighten him into changing course. You believed you knew what was best for his empire. I believed I could protect you. Fatou's expression hardened. You protected me by bringing killers into my home. Drissa accepted the words without protest. What will happen to me? He asked. You will answer for what you did. And after? That depends on whether truth has any value left by then. He lowered his head. Fatou listened as officers led him away. Salif joined her at the entrance. The file will damage the company, he said. It should. Buyers will leave. Some government contracts will disappear. Good. He studied her for a moment. What remains after that? Fatou turned toward the road. The mines that are legal. The workers who are real. The routes we can defend without paying criminals. The gold we can explain. That will be a smaller empire. Yes. Salif smiled faintly. Moussa would hate that. My father is no longer chairman. 3 months later, Kaboré Minerals reopened under a new structure. Fatou closed 4 unauthorized mining sites, dismissed more than half the security division, and created direct contracts with licensed cooperatives. Profits fell sharply. So did theft, disappearances, and payments to men who had never appeared on official payrolls. Ibrahim sold most of his shares and moved abroad before investigators could charge him over the forged transfer documents. Adama remained at the company under strict oversight, useful but never trusted. Salif became Fatou's chief legal advisor, though his briefcase was searched whenever he entered her office. Drissa eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy and unlawful access to the Kaboré residence. His evidence helped convict Issa and Seydou. The newspapers called Fatou courageous. The mining industry called her dangerous. Her father's old enemies called her naive until she cancelled their contracts, froze their accounts, and replaced their transport routes before they could retaliate. One evening, Fatou sat alone in Mousa's study while rain struck the windows. She wore the gold necklace he had left behind. The hidden compartment was empty now, the first name removed and the puzzle completed. On the desk before her stood a small scale and a single unrefined piece of gold from Hound. Moussa had believed gold was merely what men could count. Fatou had learned something else. Men counted gold because it made power look simple. They weighed it, locked it away, and killed for it because numbers were easier to understand than loyalty, fear, memory, or debt. Her father had built an empire from all 4. Fatou would build hers from what remained after they were stripped away. A knock sounded at the door. Amadou entered with the latest production figures. Fatou listened without interrupting. When he finished, he waited for approval. Send the report to the board, she said. Yes, Madam Chairwoman. His footsteps retreated. Fatou turned toward the rain. The men who murdered Moussa had believed blindness made her harmless. The men who challenged her company had believed silence meant uncertainty. Others would make the same mistake, because powerful men often preferred a familiar weakness to an unfamiliar kind of strength. Fatou rested one hand on her father's desk. She did not need his chair anymore. The kingdom had learned her voice.
Thank you for listening. Tell me, which African country would you like the next Mafia story to be based in and why? Drop your answers in the comments and I will take it from there. If you enjoyed the story, like, share, subscribe. Because somewhere in Africa, another story is already unfolding.